The first time I saw Colonel Benjamin O. Davis, Jr., he wasn't in the air. He was walking the line of aircraft at Tuskegee Army Airfield, his cap straight, his stride purposeful. He didn't talk much, but when he did, every man listened. To most of us, he was already a legend, a Black West Point graduate who had endured 4 years of silence from his classmates and still finished near the top of his class. But to us, he wasn't a myth. He was flesh and blood, the calm at the center of a storm we hadn't yet flown into. We were the Tuskegee Airmen, the first black military aviators in the United States Army Air Corps. The world didn't believe we could fly. The Army called us an experiment. But Colonel Davis didn't call it that. He called it a mission. He used to say, "Gentlemen, excellence is the only argument they can't ignore." So, we worked until excellence became our habit. Tuskegee, Alabama, wasn't glamorous. It was hot, dusty, and unforgiving. The red clay clung to our boots and covered every surface, even the wings of the planes. But it was ours, a patch of sky where we could finally prove ourselves. We trained in worn-out P-40 Warhawks, aircraft that had already lived hard lives in other squadrons. The engines coughed, the hydraulics leaked, and the heat made the cockpit feel like an oven. But every time those propellers turned, it was music. The cadets were nervous but determined. College graduates, mechanics, sons of preachers and postal workers, men who had grown up in a country that told them they couldn't possibly be pilots. But under Davis's command, failure was not an option. He led with discipline, precision, and quiet confidence. He didn't shout. He didn't have to. His presence alone demanded perfection. The program was constantly under a microscope. Every flight log, every mechanical report, every crash landing was reviewed by officers who didn't want us to succeed. We knew that one mistake could shut the whole thing down. The colonel knew it too. That's why he drilled his men relentlessly. He told us, "You are not only fighting for victory overseas, you're fighting for the right to serve your own country." And we believed him. When the 99th Fighter Squadron was finally declared combat ready, it wasn't just another unit going to war, it was a statement. America was about to learn what Tuskegee could do. In the spring of 1943, the 99th Fighter Squadron shipped out to North Africa. The war in Europe had already stretched the world thin, and the Mediterranean skies were filled with smoke and steel. The men of Tuskegee were ready, though the reception wasn't warm. Some white officers still saw them as a novelty, but that didn't last long. Their first missions were ground attacks over Pantelleria and Sicily. They bombed radar installations, strafed enemy convoys, and disrupted German supply lines. I remember hearing the first radio reports, calm voices returning from combat, proud and professional. The 99th had performed flawlessly. But back in Washington, old prejudice persisted. Reports came in claiming the unit lacked aggressiveness. It was a lie, a paper wound meant to slow their rise. Colonel Davis flew home to defend his men before the War Department itself. He stood tall, looked the generals in the eye, and told them the truth. "The record of my men speaks for itself. You can't measure courage with suspicion." His testimony worked. The 99th stayed in the fight, and the fight was about to get much bigger. In 1944, the Army formed a new unit, the 332nd Fighter Group. It combined the 99th with 3 new squadrons, the 100th, the 301st, and the 302nd. Together they would become known as the Red Tails. They were stationed in Italy, flying out of Ramitelli Airfield. That's where the transformation happened. The old Warhawks were replaced by sleek, silver P-51 Mustangs. To make sure the world knew who was flying them, the crews painted their tails bright red. The first time those planes took off, sunlight flashing off metal, red tails gleaming, every man on the ground felt pride swell in his chest. The color wasn't just for show. It was a message: we are here, and we belong. Their new mission was escort duty, protecting bombers deep into enemy territory. It was one of the most dangerous jobs in the air. Before the Red Tails arrived, bomber crews suffered heavy losses over Germany. Fighters from other groups often chased enemy planes for personal glory, leaving the bombers exposed. Colonel Davis changed that. He gave a simple order: you will stay with the bombers. You will not leave them. Not for medals, not for headlines. It was a command that defined the unit. The Red Tails gained a reputation for discipline and courage. They guarded the B-17s and B-24s like shepherds, never letting the enemy slip through. Word spread fast among the bomber crews. "Give us the boys with the red tails," they'd say. It became their badge of honor. The enemy came hard and fast. Messerschmitts and Focke-Wulfs filled the European skies, and later the new Me-262 jets added a terrifying speed no piston plane could match. But the men of the Red Tails were better trained, steadier in formation, and more disciplined than most. Dogfights are a blur of motion and sound. There's no time for second-guessing, only the steady voice in your headset and the habit of training. The Red Tails trusted their instruments, their wingmen, and the leadership that had prepared them. On March 24, 1945, near Berlin, Captain Roscoe Brown and his pilots engaged German jets and brought several down. It was the first time American pilots reported kills against the new jet fighters. Small victories like that changed the way the Air Force saw them. By the end of the war, the Red Tails had destroyed more than 260 enemy aircraft, shredded enemy logistics, and crippled supply lines. They destroyed trains, trucks, and even helped disable a German destroyer in the Adriatic. But their proudest achievement wasn't the tally of kills. It was the lives they saved. Bomber groups escorted by the Red Tails suffered some of the lowest loss rates in the 15th Air Force. Bomber crews began to ask specifically for flights with the Red Tails, and that trust said everything about their reputation. Still, the victory in the air did not erase the battle on the ground. Segregation followed black airmen overseas. They ate apart, slept apart, and sometimes were denied the very honors their service had earned them. There were patrols that refused to salute, and clubs that refused to serve men who had just risked everything for the same flag. Colonel Benjamin O. Davis, Jr. led through example. He demanded discipline, excellence, and dignity. He reminded his men that their service was both a fight against the Axis and a struggle to prove a nation's promise. Their conduct, even in the face of insult, was part of the victory. When the war ended, the Red Tails had flown more than 15,000 missions. 66 pilots did not return. Their names are part of the ledger of sacrifice. Returning home, many airmen found a nation still slow to recognize them, yet the record they left could not be denied. In 1948, President Harry S. Truman signed Executive Order 9981, beginning the desegregation of the armed forces. The performance of the Tuskegee Airmen was a key reason that order became possible. The Red Tails had proven that courage and skill know no color. Years later, when a young person stands before a P-51 Mustang at a museum and hears the story of those red tails flashing through the sky, they learn more than history. They learn that excellence can be an instrument of change, that dignity can be a weapon against prejudice, and that ordinary men can alter the course of a nation by refusing to accept a lesser fate. That is the legacy of the Red Tails, guardian pilots who flew to protect others, who endured both combat and bigotry, and who helped lift a country closer to the ideals it professed. Long after the guns went silent, the legend of the Red Tails lived on. Their story became more than a chapter in military history. It became proof of what determination, discipline, and dignity can accomplish even in the face of doubt. Colonel Benjamin O. Davis, Jr. went on to become a general, just like his father before him. His quiet strength and unshakable belief in fairness left a mark on every man who served under him. The Red Tails had not only fought for freedom overseas, they had fought for the right to belong in the country they defended. Today, when we look up at the sky, we can still imagine those crimson tails cutting through the clouds, escorting bombers home, protecting strangers, and showing the world what courage looks like. Their spirit reminds us that excellence and honor never fade. They rise with every new generation that dares to dream. And maybe that's the lesson the Red Tails left behind, that we can all lift one another higher. If you enjoyed this story, we'd love to have you join our growing community of history lovers and storytellers. Tap subscribe to hear more true and forgotten stories from our past, stories of courage, compassion, and the people who made a difference. And if this one touched you, please give it a thumbs up. It helps keep our channel flying and brings more stories like this one to life. Thank you for listening, and until next time, keep your eyes on the sky and your heart in the story.